LinkedIn is where B2B content dominates, and top creators are getting hundreds of thousands of followers. So let's build a system that studies what they post, figures out why it works, and automatically turns it into new ideas for your own content. Script their past posts, use AI to break down their strategy, and then generate original post ideas tailored to your niche. We're going to use make.com, and as usual, I'll start from scratch. And by the end of this video, you'll have a repeatable system for generating new LinkedIn content ideas. Let's get into it. So first, LinkedIn doesn't have an API, and we need some way to get the posts. So we need a tool called PhantomBuster, which is the one I have open here. And the reason is if I come in here and look at our options for scraping, there are a ton of tools that you can use. So the first step in actually getting our posts from LinkedIn is to find the post scraper. So we're going to stick with LinkedIn, and then it's going to be our activity extractor here, LinkedIn activity extractor. So it's going to get posts and it can get other activity too. It's actually useful for like comments if you want to pull comments and stuff. But today we're just going to use it for our posts in this video. And our first steps are going to be set up PhantomBuster, and PhantomBuster is going to go and scrape the posts, collect the posts. We're going to put them somewhere in Google Sheets, and then we'll actually do something with those posts. And I've already created a Google Sheet, and it's really simple. It just has a list of LinkedIn profile URLs that I want to scrape. So the idea would be you would have a large list of people who might be in your industry, in your niche, or just top influencers that you want to convert their ideas and use it within your niche. I'm going to stick with just one today, but the idea is you can run through a bunch. Justin Welsh, I think he's one of the top influencers on LinkedIn, and his posts at this point have, I think he has, I don't know, 500,000 followers, which is a ton on LinkedIn, and posts about every day. So all we need to do is create the Google Sheet. Then we're going to grab the Google Sheet and bring it back over to our PhantomBuster, drop it in, and we need to make sure our sheet is shared publicly. So you just do share, anyone with the link has viewer access, and that's how PhantomBuster is going to access our sheet. And then once we put it in here, there's a little magic that happens. When you do spreadsheet settings, it'll pull in all of the titles from the sheet one, and then you just pick which one contains the LinkedIn profile URLs. So we named it LinkedIn profile URL, which is great. Save that. And then the next step is you're going to connect your LinkedIn account. I have already done this. It's a really simple step. If this wasn't here, it would say install the Chrome extension. So you just install the Chrome extension, make sure you're logged in, and then this pops up and it automatically connects you to LinkedIn. Now, keep in mind, this is an actual scraping tool. This will pretend to be you from a server. It actually spins up a headless browser pretty much. And in the background on the PhantomBuster servers will actually go and interact with LinkedIn as if you were doing it. So when you're using this, just make sure that you set limits within reasonable amounts so you're not overly scraping or you're not sending too many messages or spamming anybody. And PhantomBuster does a good job of showing you limits on what you should and should not be doing within PhantomBuster. Click save. And then it asks you how many profiles you want to process per launch. So there's an idea of launches within PhantomBuster. If we have this on a schedule, we could have it launch every hour, every day, every week, whenever. And it's pretty much saying how many profiles do you want to run through. We only have one, but if you had 100 profiles in there, you might want to set this to 100. Again, that would be too many because you wouldn't want the scraper to flag LinkedIn that you are using a bot. So usually like 10. I'll a lot of times keep this pretty low, especially for people who don't have active LinkedIn accounts. You'd want to keep this pretty low. So you might want this to be like 2 per launch, and you have it run every couple hours, and it's going to pull posts. And then you choose which type you want. You do post, articles, comments. These comments would be the comments of the person's profile. So for example, we have Justin Welsh as our profile. So it would be any of his comments going out if you need to use those. We're going to stick with just posts today, but articles, newsletters could be very interesting to get content ideas from. And then you choose how many posts you actually want to scrape. So I'm going to do 5 just to keep it low, but you could bump it up a bit. These final advanced settings, you can just leave blank. If you want to do past a specific date, you can choose this, and you could choose the date you want to have them scrape past. We really want to go back in time and collect all of the LinkedIn posts to process. So we'll leave that blank, unchecked. Save, and then it will ask you how often you want to run this. So you can run it repeatedly after another Phantom, which is a little more advanced, and just once. So we're just going to run it once. But if you had, for example, you wanted to get all of the recent posts every week, you could have it repeatedly, and then you could choose once per week. There's so many options here that you could have it run. But we're just going to run it once because we just want to get the last 5 posts so we can process our ideas and then save it. That's pretty much it. So if I go and run, this will actually just scrape the post. So this is really the main aspect. You can scrape it, you can download the post, you can do something with those posts, but we want to take a step further and actually automate this full system. All right, now we have our posts that have come back. We've gotten the last 5 posts, which are great. We got the links, we have a bunch of data from it. So this actually went, scraped them, pulled them in, and now let's actually do something with these posts. So let's jump over to Make and start our blank scenario. If you're not familiar with Make, it is a no code tool that lets you automate about anything, which is exactly what we want to do with our lives. And the first thing we're going to do is grab PhantomBuster and we're going to get an output. I've already connected my account to PhantomBuster. The connections are super easy. It typically will walk you through. It normally opens a window, you log in, and that's the connection, which is great. If anything, sometimes you have to go grab an API key, which is also very straightforward. And we are going to we're going to turn off mapping. So instead of putting the Phantom ID in, we're going to choose our Phantom, which is our untitled LinkedIn activity extractor. We'll save it and let's do the first step and just run it and make sure we're connected and getting some data. And we did, which is great. So this is going to output not what you would think. It doesn't actually output the results. It outputs the container that ran the flow, what they call them in PhantomBuster. So it's going to give you a bunch of kind of logs, and that's about it, which isn't very useful. So to get the actual content, which you'll find out is also not very useful, we do download a result. In this one, we are going to enter manually, and it just expects a container ID. So we'll grab the container ID from our last output. And let's run it again just to make sure things are connected correctly. And they are. And let's see what we got. We got a bunch of binary gibberish. So what do we do with all this binary data? We actually need to turn it into something. We need to process it. So this is like the raw file binary data from the file. Technically, this is a JSON file that we're going to get. We just grab our JSON module. We're going to do parse JSON. And there's a little trick to this because you can't just put the data in. It won't know what to do with it, and it'll just break it. So we actually need to use a function called toString, which is a magical function that will turn this data into a string, which is pretty cool. So let's just save this. And I'm a big fan of constantly running along the way and see what we get. So let's see what we got this time. And look, there's something that makes a little more sense. So we're starting to make a little more sense as we work our way through. But if you look at it, it has this interesting collection bundle, which is fine. But then it has this result object. And then within that, it has more JSON, but it's a JSON string. So that's not what we want. So we have to go one step further and we need to parse the JSON one more time. So let's connect this. And this time we don't need to do the toString because we actually have the JSON string. And let's run it one more time and see if we got it this time. And look at that. We got it this time. So this is the results now finally in a form that we can use. So this now has created each of those results into a bundle. And now this will make it a lot more sense. So post URL, image, the type, the content, which is the actual post, which is great. So now we have our actual content. Now let's put it somewhere. So I'd already created this doc that we pulled the profiles from. Let's use this second sheet just for actually putting the posts in. So we'll do author and post for now, and then we can expand on it if we need to. And you can put this anywhere. Google Docs just is always the easiest. I feel like it's usually the easiest to explain. Most people can use it. It's free. So it typically is the best place for these demo purposes. But for example, I use Notion like crazy. I love Notion. So I would probably put this in some type of Notion database, Airtable. There's so many other options you could put it into as well. I'm going to grab the sheet, and we're going to grab sheet 2. And then it automatically pulls in our headers. And then we just need to connect the data. Now, I didn't add these other headers yet, but let's actually just throw some of this content in. So we have post URL, we have like count, comment count, repost count, and then post timestamp. Save it. And as usual, let's run it real quick just to make sure we have it. So we ran through the bundles. I limited it to 5 on purpose because I didn't want 100 posts in here. And we put 5 in. Let's come over here, and it looks like it's all there. Reformat this just a little bit. So this is already a huge step right here, is just getting the content into the Google Sheet. Now that it's in here, you can do whatever you want with it. So we'll go and process some ideas around generating content, but this is a major piece, is just getting this content into somewhere that you can easily access it. Now let's go over here and do something interesting with it. So before it goes into the Google Sheet, let's run a little AI on our post and have it generate some ideas on what we could do with that post or focus it into our niche. I'll pick O3, O4 mini, O3 mini, the same price. They're both the reasoning models. I found they both work fantastic. And then we're going to give this a developer prompt first, and then we'll give it a user prompt with actual like prompt. So I already have some of these typed out, just so you don't have to watch me type. Let's copy and paste some of them. So you were a senior content strategist. This is really just setting the stage on what you want our prompter to be. Maybe even like you are an expert at social media content. There we go. And then we'll add a user, and the user is going to have a much larger prompt. And here we go. So this is just a longer prompt. I didn't want to make you have to sit and watch me type this out, but the gist is we define the role, we define what we want the task to be, and then we give it some variables pretty much. We're going to have the post text, which I need replaced with our actual post text, which is this post content, and our audience, which this can be whoever your audience is. So this would be like, who do you want your audience to be? So I'll say something like AI automation enthusiasts who want to build automations for themselves or business or their clients to make more money or save more time. But you would set this to whatever your niche is, and it will help generate ideas specifically for your niche. And then this prompt goes in pretty good detail on the tasks that need to be created, the formats. We want to break down the structure, the strategy used, explain why the post performed well, translate into a reusable framework or formula, and then write some ideas, 3 ideas, suggest a tweet size or short form video hook. And then we're going to return it as a JSON object. And when we return it as a JSON object, it really just makes it easy to reuse. And then since we're returning JSON, we need to come down here and choose advanced. And then the response format is going to be JSON. And we want it to go ahead and parse the JSON so we can reuse it. So let's see what happens. I'm going to unlink the Google Sheet for a minute just to watch the AI run and see what we get as the result. And it's going to run through all 5, which is going to take some time because I chose a reasoning model and they are actually pretty slow. So while it's loading, let's go ahead and see what is coming back. And the message is going through, and we want to look at the results. So the results are pretty much core message of whatever the post was. Was this our first one? Let's see what the first post was. Entrepreneurs are obsessed with scale. That's true, but scale has a problem. So he goes into scale and gives some type of anecdote, which is pretty common with his posts. And then we want to see what it came back with. Core message: you don't need to chase endless growth to automate every process. But you actually do need to automate every process. That's why we're doing these videos. You only need just enough to achieve freedom and results. So it breaks down the format, which is amazing, psychological triggers, which is amazing, and why it worked. So super cool. This is exactly what we need. And then it comes up with some post ideas. So post idea one: everyone says you should automate every task, but binge automation has a downside. So it's great. So this, he actually happens to mention automation. So now it's switching the theme and idea to my own audience. And if you would have your own audience in here, your niche of whoever that might be, business owners or someone who needs SEO or whatever it might be, someone who needs new designs, a new website, this would focus it on what you have. So this alone, these posts would be fantastic. I'd probably expand a little bit on them, but these are great posts that I could probably post in 15 minutes. Maybe I'll do that right after this. I'll go post it. Plus a short form hook for a tweet or something. So the idea is that this is going to run, and for every post that we get back, we are going to run this prompt and then we're going to drop it in the Google Sheet next to the original post. And you can do whatever you want with it after that point. Do you want to have it generate ideas constantly, like daily? Do you want to do one big batch? And then you can do whatever you want with it, with that content. So we'll link it up to Google Sheets, but you can decide: do you want this to run daily? Do you want it to generate ideas? Do you want it to actually go ahead and write the post, which would only be maybe one more prompt? And then you would need to have a bit of a human in the loop just to make sure the content's good and matches. AI is not perfect yet at writing social posts, but it's pretty darn close. This is meant to run a giant batch of posts. So think if you wanted to generate a plethora of ideas for a client or just for yourself, you could have 200 ideas within a few minutes. So let's do the final step and actually link up this data just to get it in here. Do core message. And I know I don't have the titles in here. I'm just going to drop these in just so we have something. And then I can always go back and add the titles later. All right, now I have them all hooked up, and save it. And then let's go over here and just delete all the content we already have just so we can see it fresh. And let's run it. And we're already starting to get some content over to our Google Sheet. The O3 and O4 models are pretty slow. They're fantastic, but they're pretty slow. So let's go ahead and jump over and see what we're getting so far. So it started moving over our posts. So we go to the first three, and then let's look at the content connected to it and reformat it just a little bit. So it's at the top. And here we go. So now we have our ideas. We have all of the generated content. And then we throw the titles, obviously, so we know what each of these points to. But now we have a fantastic ideas for each one of these. So I think these last three were, this last one was like the tweet worthy thing, tweet hook. This was idea 3, idea 2. If I can type, idea 2, I can do it. Idea 1. And again, these are posts that, this is supposed to be more of an idea, but these are almost posts you could post. You don't need 50 automations. You need one that actually runs. By focusing on a single high ROI workflow, I can cut my weekly manual tasks in half. It's great. Again, I wouldn't necessarily go and post this immediately, but to get ideas and to run this through another prompt to spend a little bit more time crafting a good post, it would get you 90% of the way there. This could be daily content. The final step would be adding design or video or other pieces of the creative. But again, this is amazing. And it looks like all 5 of them ran. So again, if you're going to run this, This is pretty much the full batch process. So the final step would be adding multiple profiles in here. You'd want to make sure you set your limits to be pretty low within PhantomBuster so you're not getting too many posts. And then once you run the automation within Make, you have a large batch process. So hopefully this was helpful. As usual, these blueprints will be available for free. And if you got value from this video, please like, subscribe, and check out my next video.